That's what you're gonna do? Come here, I have to clean your eyes. Dude, are you... Thank you. Jeez. Okay. You good? You good? Welcome to this week's episode of Sessions with Blue. This is my dog, Blue. She is a 6-year-old Cane Corso, and myself, Geoff. Today I wanted to talk to you about something I've been dealing with, and I know some of you have too, and that's this growing tired and weary while we wait on the Lord for things. I've noticed it not just in myself, but with a lot of my close friends. That fatigue of waiting, whether it's waiting on a promise that has been given to you, or a change in your circumstances, or just to see the fruit of your labor in a season finally. You've been showing up, you've been praying, you've been doing the best that you can to trust the Lord with all these things that haven't seemed like they've been changing really. And now, you've been waiting for so long, you're kind of wondering, does the Lord even see me? Or maybe he has even forgot about you, which might even lead to, is he actually real? If that's where you are, or where you feel like you're headed, I just want you to know, like, the Lord sees you, and you are not alone. So in this episode, we're going to break down into a few parts. So in this episode, we're going to break that down into a few parts and walk through it together. So let's start with part 1. We'll call this God Sees You in Your Weariness. In this section, I want to talk about how the Lord sees how tired and weary you are. I can refer back to Psalm 34:18, which says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." I can't tell you how many times I didn't have words to express how I felt in many situations. And all I could really tell the Lord in those times was like, God, I'm incredibly tired right now. And one of the things I think he loves about that is the fact that I'm honest with him about how I feel. I've said this in a different video, but there is something pure in honesty, even when it can be a few words. We also have to remember he's God, so he can take our honesty. He also doesn't need big, fancy words from us, or even really to describe what we're feeling. I think he cares more about the fact that we tell him what's on our hearts and what's on our minds, and that he wants us to keep coming back to him. We forget that he formed us, and that he knows our personalities, our struggles, and even our next moves, even to the number of hairs on our head. I've come to the conclusion, he just wants to be with you in the tiredness and the weariness. So if you're tired, trust me, he already knows you are. This leads us into part 2. We'll call this the marathon mindset. Lately, I've been thinking of this season of my life like this giant long hallway. And on the right side and the left side of me are these doors all the way along this hallway. And some of those doors I thought would be open by now, and they haven't. And some that were closed for good, I thought they wouldn't be. And here I am, just kind of like walking in this giant hallway with all these doors. And I'm waiting for one door to finally swing open, or even just push it open a little bit. And it's been hard when you feel like nothing is changing, doing the same thing over and over, and you've been putting in the work. It's hard when you thought certain prayers would be answered by now, but even in the hallway, I just want to encourage you and let you know the Lord is still walking with you. Also, I constantly have to remind myself, if you're walking with the Lord, it's not a sprint, it's more of a marathon. A marathon takes a lot of time, and not everyone moves at the same pace. In some seasons, you're sprinting. As soon as that gun goes off on that marathon race, you're in full sprint mode, like straight out of the gates, and everything's going great. And then you realize by like mile 6 or mile 7, you're starting to slow down. Are you good? And you begin to walk because you're out of breath, and maybe you didn't train well enough to keep running. Other times you might even just be crawling, like barely moving. And then you have other times where you might just stop and say like, I need a break. But I want to encourage you, whether you're sprinting or jogging or walking, crawling, or even just resting, you're still in this race and you're still moving. Something I also have to remind myself is that the Lord doesn't measure your pace. He's measuring more of your faithfulness in the race. The race is your life, essentially. So when you do finish this marathon we call life, you can hear the words that Paul writes in 2 Timothy 4:7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith. We want to get to the gates, and we want to stand before him with our heads held high and hear him say those words to us. And if I'm honest with you, sometimes that's really the only thing that keeps me going. I'm waiting to hear those words. And I was driving the other day and I was thinking about my past when I used to run cross country and track. And we would always have this saying that if you weren't dead tired after the race, you had more in the tank. And so I'd argue, if you aren't tired at the end of this life, your own life, you could have probably done more. This leads me into part 3. We'll call it When Faith Looks Like Staying. And there's something deeply profound about staying with God when you're tired and you're weary, whether that's during a trialing time or a difficult season. We live in a culture that wants quick fixes, immediate breakthroughs. Maybe we want answers now. And if it's difficult or tiring, we just don't want to do it anymore. We want to just move on because that tends to be easier in the end. I've seen it happen over and over again. People grow tired and then they grow distant. Their hearts become hardened, and in the end, resentment builds. They begin to start believing, if God loved me, he would have pulled me out of this by now. Even to, if he was real, this would have changed, or this wouldn't have happened at all. Our inner dialogue with ourselves begin to make things up that necessarily aren't true, but we tend to make it feel like it because we're in the moment. But let me say this, and I'll preface it with love. Our circumstances do not define God's character, and his silence doesn't mean he's absent, and his delays are not always denials. Being tired and weary but still walking on this narrow road builds character. Be honest with ourselves, character isn't built when things are easy. It's the perseverance of doing something difficult that builds us. I can't think of a single time when something easy shaped me. It's always been in the difficult and hard seasons I grow the most. The ones where I wanted to quit, or the ones I don't have much in the tank, but I still show up. And when I look back at those times, I can't help but imagine the Lord saying, I see you in your tiredness, and I'm very proud of you. I can trust you with more now because you didn't give up during this hard time. And while I don't live for people's opinions, there is something meaningful when a friend can say, when things get hard, like Geoff doesn't fold. Even when Geoff or another person is tired, their character remains the same. Part 4, when you're close to giving up. When I think about giving up, I go back to the book of Joshua, specifically chapter 6. In chapter 6, the Israelites had just crossed into the promised land after 40 years in the wilderness. And their first major obstacle was Jericho, a heavily fortified city with massive walls. And the Lord gave them instructions that probably felt strange at the time, and they were to walk around the city once a day for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, walk around it 7 times and shout. And this was a test of obedience and endurance, and ultimately trust. They had to keep walking, even when nothing seemed to be happening, while also being tired. And it wasn't until the 13th lap, after a full week of obedience, being tired, probably growing weary and questioning everything, that's when the walls finally fell. What if they gave up on day 6 because they were tired and weary? The walls wouldn't have fallen because they gave up 1 day short of what they were called to do. And we can also look at the story of Joseph. He was sold into slavery by his own brothers at 17 and then sold again by the Ishmaelites. So he was essentially sold twice and then also thrown into prison, among other things. But he became ruler of Egypt at age 30. And so that's 13 years of probably questions, 13 years of waiting, 13 years of frustration, 13 years of being tired, and probably 13 years of wondering. And the whole time the Lord was with him behind the scenes, basically weaving together a story that we now read about. And maybe, just maybe, he's doing the same in your life right now. And this leads me into part 5 of the episode, which we'll call Practical Encouragement for the Weary. If you're in that tired and weary place, here are a few things I want you to hold on to. One is to get around people who remind you of the truth. Don't isolate yourself. We were never meant to do this alone. Another one is to keep praying, even if your only words are, I am really tired. He wants, and I think he enjoys your honesty. The next one would be rest, but don't quit. You can be still in the Lord and continue to move forward. God sees your persistence, He sees your faithfulness, even when you're tired, and I promise you, he hasn't forgot about you. So if you're tired, if you feel like you've been walking around the same wall over and over again with no visible progress, I just want to say, don't stop walking. You might be on your day 6 and you have 1 day left. I used to play in this band called Sleeping Giant, and our singer Tommy Green wrote a song called "This Calls for Patient Endurance on Part of the Saints." And that title has stuck out to me, especially during these difficult seasons of my life. And that's what it feels like, patient endurance. So let me remind you, you can still finish this season and race well, even when you're tired. Until next time. Blue.
What are you doing? You just